The bullet that found its mark. Victor was a miserable man who kept mostly to himself and only went into town when he found it absolutely necessary. Even so, he still managed to get into a number of fights and make plenty of enemies when in town. Probably Victor's biggest enemy was a man named Isaac Archer. Isaac was a local peace officer who didn't much care for Victor or his troublesome trips into town. He was known for giving Victor a hard time and for getting in quite a few scraps with him himself. One day, Isaac approached Victor at his cabin to tell him once and for all to stay out of town. Victor became enraged at this and swung at Isaac with his axe. Isaac promptly pulled out his gun and fired, just missing Victor's head and instead hitting an old chestnut tree. Victor swung back around, this time chopping Isaac's arm off. Isaac stumbled backwards and Victor swung again, whacking him in the chest and knocking him off his feet. Isaac let out a blood-curdling scream and begged Victor to stop, but Victor was too filled with rage to back down and instead continued his assault, chopping Isaac to pieces. After having lunch, he gathered up the bloody pieces of his rival and dumped them over an old ravine behind his cabin. Soon after Isaac was reported missing, folks in the town began to have their suspicions about what may have happened to him. Victor was questioned many times by the authorities, but they never found Isaac's remains and were never able to arrest Victor for the crime. Many years passed and Victor became an old and even more miserable man. He stopped going into town completely now and was soon forgotten. One day he decided to chop down the old chestnut tree, which had long since passed away. He took a few swings at it with his axe, but found the task was too daunting in his old age. So he gathered a few sticks of dynamite and tied them to the trunk of the tree. Then he lit the fuse and stood back. But the fool did not stand back quite far enough, and when the dynamite went off, it sent splinters of wood flying everywhere. Victor's eyes rolled over and he tumbled to the ground. Impacted in his forehead was the bullet fired by Isaac so many years ago, which had now finally found its mark.